When I got into high school, this is where, you're 14 years old and you see the 18-year-old, 17-year-old senior boys, and they're men, they're grown up, they're strong, they're taller, they're hairier, they're bigger, and it's intimidating. And this is where sexuality starts to blossom, and prime time for adolescence. And I was also scared. It's this sexuality scared me. Just in high school as a whole. So I just played into the role of the other boys at school, and I'm one of the bros. I did use the words gay and faggot just as a way of fitting in. And I started throwing parties behind my parents' back, and I was good at this. I was good at fitting in. I was good at being one of the boys and part of the scene, and the high school scene, just as you see it in the movies. And but I was, it was tough. I every morning I had to wake up thinking that I can't be myself. There were two boys who were in the grade above me who were known as bullies in the entire school. They would pick on any of the kids for numerous reasons. And I thought I was being smart. I thought that I shouldn't invite them. And, they weren't even in my grade. I wasn't friends with them. They were older. And I thought, if I'm going to do something behind my parents' back, I might as well just not invite them. So I want to cause the least amount of damage possible. I'm already breaking my parents' rules. So these boys, they started to now target me in their bullying, simply because I was younger and I wasn't inviting them to these house parties that almost the entire school was invited to. And there was an incident where they tried to get in my face outside of school. I think it was the beginning of my junior year. It was the first Friday of school, and it was in front of the school, and there was a cross guard who said, carry on, don't make a fight or anything. And I was actually in my car, and they were walking across the crosswalk and yelling things at me. And in that moment, what I did was I rolled down my window and I yelled at them, "You fucking faggots," and I drove off. An hour later from that moment, I was in the emergency room. They had followed me, and them and their friends attacked me. When I really started to think about that I actually had to say that day when I got beat up. Just because someone was targeting me or doing something, I could have walked away. I could have stood back. There's a million things I could have done, but I used the one word I would have never wanted anyone to call me, my own closeted fear, onto someone else. And I could have changed what happened that day. And it was only about a year and a half ago, I chose to call the two boys specifically to have a conversation. And I actually I was calling to apologize to them. After the incident, I was feeling very scared for myself, and I felt that I needed to tell someone, and the first person I told was my father. I felt that there's anyone who was going to help me, and he was also the scariest person to tell. I thought it would be my father, and he gave me an amazing response, which is that he loved me no matter what. His fear started to show up about a week later, and he started looking for a therapist to get advice and help. And he came across general psychotherapists who were being done by gay men, and he also came across by psychotherapists who believed in conversion therapy. And he's a licensed, highly credentialed person who explained to my father that there is no such thing as homosexuality, and that, especially with boys, because we're talking about myself, there is conversion therapy for females as well, that I was just suffering from a psychological condition. No one forced me into conversion therapy. My father explained to me his fears, explained to me that he found a conversion therapist and that he wanted me to try this therapy, that I should give it a shot, and I said okay. Now, as scared as I was, the fact that there was someone offering an option that I could have the same feelings for a girl that I do for a boy, that's something I wanted. I didn't want a face coming out in my high school, or all these horrible stories about being bullied, or I'm not going to have a family, or I'm not going to get a job, I might end up homeless, or I might even commit suicide from coming out. And so I began my 5 years of conversion therapy. My conversion therapy included, I included me being separated from my mother and my sisters. It's a part of the healing process to learn how to distance myself from females, so I keep them as the mysterious opposite sex that I will one day bring them back into my heterosexual life. Learning not to have effeminate behaviors. I was using masturbation and pornography techniques to basically match up the sensation of my orgasm to imagery of the female body. And I had to do all these things as a teenager. And as I grew up, my resentment grew. But I was so angry that I took part in the lawsuit. And I actually brought a lawsuit against my father. And it wasn't really about their divorce or my parents. It was about me being so angry with my father. For 5 years, I went through conversion therapy. You separated me from my mother and my sisters, who I lived with and was so close to. And now you're trying to hurt mom in a divorce. And how dare you try to harm us anymore? And I became ruthless. I did everything I could to hurt my father during that time. And it was right there and then when I took this personal development and training course that actually someone had recommended to me at the law firm I hired. And this is where I started to realize the same thing, that I have a say in everything that happens in my life, and I don't have to be in a lawsuit against my father either. The first steps I did was I went to go see my father. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. He had moved back to his native country. He was born in Israel, and he moved back to Israel during his divorce. And I get to Israel, and we have dinner together after I get ready, and it was just the most amazing sight. It was seeing my father. My sisters had taken my side and not spoken to him either, and so it was the three of us with my father for the first time in 5 years. So my father and I, we go on this walk, and he says to me, we stop, and he looks at me and says, "Whatever happened to the conversion therapy? What happened? It sounds like you're a gay man today. Where are you in your life?" And I said, yeah, Dad, I am. I'm an openly gay man. I ended up stopping the conversion therapy, and I met some really inspiring and great people, and I'm really happy. I'm in a great place. And my father in that moment, he went right back into what he always would say before. He went into like this 10-minute speech about how I can't be gay, how I'm making a mistake. I just listened, and even though I heard it before, I was listening for the first time. And whatever my previous thoughts were my father, I said, I'm going to put that on the side. In his way, he was trying to save my life from something. And I never looked at him that way. Before, it was this horrible man in my life. And now I was like, wow, this man is trying to save me from something. And it was the first time I recognized that. And I just stopped him in the middle of his speech. I give him a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. And I look at him and I say, Dad, I'm going to be okay. There's nothing to worry about. The path I was going on was I was never seeing my father again. And my father, he didn't know who I was when I turned 20 or 21 or 22 or 23 or 18, 19. It was those 5 years up until I was 24 that I got my father back. And I won't get that back, and all I have is right now and the rest that we live together. And I'm thankful for that.